Welcome back to the Winter Growers Podcast. In this episode, I had the pleasure of speaking with Mark and Kristen Kimball of Essex Farm in Essex, New York. With over 20 years farming together, Mark and Kristen are known for their year-round free choice whole diet CSA model on 130 acres, with 22 acres in vegetables and access to 1,100 acres for grazing, haymaking, and sugaring, producing everything from veggies, fruit, grains, meat, dairy, eggs, maple syrup, fermented foods, and value-added products. Their focus is on providing their local community with all their primary food needs. Kristen is also author of 2 wonderful books featuring Essex Farm, including The Dirty Life and Good Husbandry. Our conversation centers on how they are able to accomplish and balance the complexities of a year-round whole diet CSA model and their approach to winter food in the form of not only storage crops, but through the animals they raise who harvest the sun's abundance in the form of grass, forbs, and legumes and store it as nutrient-dense protein and fat. They believe that this is season extension too, and complementary to fresh vegetable production. A very insightful conversation, and it's always such a joy connecting with Mark and Kristen. Today's episode of the Winter Growers Podcast is brought to you by Johnny's Selected Seeds. When you need proven varieties you can count on and detailed guidance from seeding to harvest, consider Johnny's your trusted growing partner. Our same-day shipping can help keep your planting schedules on track when the unexpected happens. We're here to help you grow good food. Turning to Johnny's means you can plant high-quality, trial-proven varieties with confidence and know that our expert staff is ready to help with first-hand knowledge, because we've grown them ourselves. This episode is also brought to you by Rimmel Greenhouses. Whether it's tomatoes to market, flowers in the spring, or vegetables for your family, growing in a greenhouse protected from the weather provides the right environment for a harvest you can count on. Rimmel Greenhouses are strong, durable, and easy to assemble, offering the quality you need to grow productively year-round. The team of experts at Rimmel will be your trusted partners to ensure you get exceptional value from your greenhouse investment. Visit rimmel.com today. All right, enjoy the show. Welcome to the Winter Growers Podcast. Today I have Mark and Kristen Kimball of Essex Farm in New York. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you, Clara. It's great to be here.
I'm really excited to have you both here. We met, I think over 10 years ago at a conference, and I have this very distinct memory, and we'll see what you remember. But what I remember, I believe it was NOFA New York conference, and you were doing a workshop about a farmer's market, farm stand makeover. And I walked in and Mark was dressed in complete drag with a blonde wig and a pink dress. And I think, Kristen, you might have had like a mask on or something as well. But it was the makeover edition of your farm stand. And it was a very entertaining, amusing, and, intelligent workshop. So what do you remember of that?
Well, I'm amazed that you still speak to us because we totally humiliated ourselves at those conferences. And yes, I'm impressed that you chose to speak with us afterward. And so glad that you did, because it's been wonderful to get to know you over the last decade and share knowledge and talk farming.
What do you remember, Mark?
I have a lot of different memories from that conference, and I don't think any of them make it onto the audio file, this one, but there were some hilarious things that happened that I think you were also party to. But yeah, we did some pretty crazy things, and we still do. One of the conferences we did, we buried a Ken doll into a little calf we were eviscerating as part of a butcher demonstration. And people were like, how did the Ken doll get into the calf? And that had some blowback that we had to deal with at some point too.
Wait, so how did the Ken doll get into the calf?
Well, we were doing it in the snow at the University of Vermont, and I had just put a surgical slice on the side of this carcass and put the Ken doll in so that as I'm eviscerating it, it looked like the Ken doll had been part of the feed of this calf that had been grown on another farm, and it led to a lot of people having really raised eyebrows. And we try to keep it lively if we can.
Well, I remember after that conference, I believe we connected and you invited me to come see your farm shortly thereafter. And I remember, I believe I took the ferry across from, on Lake Champlain, and it was amazing. I mean, I have, such vivid memories of a very brief visit, an incredible operation. And that was over 10 years ago too. So I'm sure it's changed a lot. But I mean, between the two of you, you have over 20 years of farming, and you've created this fairly unique year-round free choice whole diet CSA model, which is very complicated and I'm sure a lot to juggle. But I am looking forward to hearing kind of what has motivated you all these years to continue it. How has it evolved? The winter aspects of it. It really is fulfilling and satisfying a need for year-round local food production. So how do we get it to more farms? I know that's probably a question that both of you are asking as well. So yeah, I'd love to get started with your backgrounds. How did you get into all this, and how did you meet? All that fun stuff.
You go first, because my story is a lot simpler.
Mine can be pretty simple. I often hearken to my parents, who left fancy jobs in Manhattan to raise me and my sister on a small homestead on fairly poor soil in the Catskills. And then we moved to New Paltz. Some of you may know New Paltz out there. And then I sort of forgot about farming until I got to college. And then this really neat professor named Mark Jacobs had a Kellogg's grant left over from the 70s, and I was in school in the early 90s. And he had a course called Crop Plants in the biology department. And that was really the beginning, because he said, look, I've got this money to take you on field trips to see farms in the greater Philadelphia region. Unrelated to your grade, come with me if you want to see farms. And so that was really the sort of adult awakening of oh my gosh, there's a thing as a farm. And I went to see, it was mostly, what you'd expect in New Jersey and that sort of urban Philly area, which is vegetable and fruit operations, a couple animal operations. And we just spent our Saturdays hanging out at these different places. And I immediately said, I'm done with environmental science. I am so into farming. Can I make my major into farming? And the school was like, okay, it never happened before, but go for it. And then when I graduated, bicycled across to about 70 different farms from coast to coast with the idea of is this really what I want? And came home with the sort of astounding, oh my gosh, more than I ever thought. And basically that was 94, 95 when I biked across country, and I haven't looked back. It really feels exactly right for me, and I feel really lucky.
And my story starts in New York City, weirdly enough, in around 2000, 2001. I was living in the city and working as a freelance writer. And I started to get interested in these farms that were popping up in the Hudson Valley that were all founded by first-generation farmers. I thought that was an intriguing story at a time when most people were trying to get out of farming. And I eventually met this very talkative, very tall, possibly insane farmer in Pennsylvania named Mark. And I walked onto his farm, and something really, really deep clicked, both on a personal level and with me, and this idea of nurturing food from the ground. And we fell in love, and we both left our respective places to start Essex Farm together in late 2003. And here we are in 2024 with not only a farm, but 2 children and a marriage that has weathered all of the vicissitudes of farming and raising kids.
Congratulations. I know that is not an easy feat.
For us, it was just easy.
Yeah, right.
And Kristen, you share a lot of that story in your first book, The Dirty Life, which I have read, and great book. And you share a little bit about how you came across the land that you're on now. It sounded like a little bit of a magical, mystical kind of experience. Can you describe that a little bit too?
Sure. It was a magical, mystical experience. I had left my rent control department in New York City, which was hard, to say the least, and had sort of thrown my faith into this new world that Mark was showing me. We were living near his parents and looking for land together, and it was tense and difficult, as land searches are. And I decided that I would give it 9 months in my head and then think about how to get back to the city. And 9 months to the day, from when we started looking for land, we connected with an absolutely wonderful landowner who had 500 acres way up north in the Adirondacks in uncharted territory to me. And we managed to forge a relationship with him and his family, and came up here to spend a year on these 500 acres. We really dug in, and here we are. Now we own most of the land that we're farming on right now, which is a miracle, and maybe a feat that couldn't be replicated today. But we're very lucky that it happened for us, and super grateful to the Kulisade family, who was the family that made it all possible for us back then.
And so, sorry, explain how many acres total now is the farm made up of, or how much do you own? What does that look like?
We own just under 500 acres. We bought the whole parcel minus a little field that the Kulisades kept. And then we lease an additional 600 or 700 acres of neighboring hay ground and woodland and pasture. So right now it's around 1,200 acres total. And I'd say maybe 300 of that is woodlot. And the rest is either grazing or crops or barnyard and roads and that kind of stuff.
And so when you first landed there, what inspired the year-round CSA model? I guess I'm just curious how that was born and how it has evolved.
I somehow in all of my agricultural formal and informal training ended up being on membership CSA style farms the whole time. And I can't really look beyond that. It's a weakness, and I guess it's a strength sometimes too. And so I don't know, Farms of Tomorrow was one of the early books that wrote about some of the sort of dirty dozen of the first CSA farms around the country. And it was really neat to read and visit a lot of those places. And along the way, each of the sort of CSA membership places would have like a mix and match table or more and more freedom instead of just a box of cabbage, right? Nobody wants a box of cabbage for the summertime. And I think people back in the 80s and 90s were also playing around with how far into the season, obviously your dad and family pushing like, oh, we can actually not only do root storage, but fresh greens. Different membership farms and CSAs were also pushing sort of, well, maybe we can bring in some cheese from a local dairy. So along the way, I think there's been a lot of different and very exciting experimentation to like, oh, we want to eat year round and we want all of our food to come from our farmer friends. How do we do that? And by the time Kristen and I met, I had played a number of those games, not just a mix and match table, but in Pennsylvania, I was doing a farm at Tate Farm where it was take anything you want by weight. Here's just a weight number, and you can have all micro mix if that's what you're into, or you can have 2 beets or some combination. And also working with some Amish producers out there to make sure we had dairy, and then eventually producing some meat and eggs on the CSA and including that in the weekly share. So when Kristen and I started talking about what came next, it seemed like we liked eating like farmers, which is you go into the milk house and you get your milk and your butter and you get your meat and your veg and your grains. Why don't we try to provide a homestead diet as a scalable operation for our friends and family and our community? And so when we got here, we had already kind of shaped this idea of a free choice year-round diet. We weren't really looking at fiber or fuel or building materials so much, which I think are really key important parts of ag. And we're doing a little more of that now. But that was sort of the genesis of it. And what's amazing, as it was with the sort of the free choice table and in different membership farms, I don't know if others have played with this, is what someone doesn't want, somebody else does, right? Somebody likes the teeny little beets and somebody likes the really giant ones because you can only have to peel one and they're still tasty. And we found that by sort of relaxing into it, if that's the right word, it's often stressful. Letting members have choice has been a really exciting part of the sort of dynamism of what we're trying to create here.
And if I could add a little bit about the full diet membership from the business perspective, it's very interesting how every farm evolves a business strategy based on their own particular needs and resources. We landed in a place that is very sparsely populated. So the Adirondack Park is one of the most sparsely populated areas in New York. We live outside of a village of 700 people. we knew that we needed to capture a significant amount of each of our sales families' food dollars in order to make it work here. And the full diet membership, where we sell a membership that includes meat, milk, vegetables, grains, value-added things like maple syrup, fruit in season, eggs, dry goods, everything. That is, I didn't know this when we started, but it turns out that that was the best way to monetize diversity, agricultural diversity, in a way that is financially, most years, making some sense. Most farms are pressured financially to scale up and tend toward monocrop. We really, really enjoy here both the social and environmental benefits of really mixing up and diversifying our agricultural production. So, 1 year we're growing strawberries in this field, next year it's going to be used to graze sheep. And we sort of keep everything in a very continual rotation that way. And because we lack economy of scale on any one product, if we were just selling product by product, it would be prohibitively costly to, have some of our production in vegetables, some in dairy, some in meat, et cetera. So selling a full diet really answers that question on the economic side. And it's been really neat to see it kind of catch fire with our members, who generally appreciate the deliciousness of food that's produced in such a rich, agriculturally diverse landscape.
And it's easier.
That's a lie.
Okay. Well, that's my next question. I mean, as farmers, how did you trust yourselves to be able to do all of the different facets? I mean, it's hard enough as it is to grow vegetables year round, let alone all those other components. So how did you trust yourselves that you were going to be able to handle that and do it well?
I think the short answer is I stepped into it with pure ignorance and Mark with pure hubris.
Perfect. That's what I was going to say.
Good combo.
That's the way we roll here at Essex Farm.
Sounds like a recipe for disaster.
And, like I was saying, every farm has its strengths. I think one of the things that Mark and I do well is, and enjoy really, is trying to orchestrate chaos into something that produces good food. Not every farm wants to do that. Not every farmer wants to do that. Not every worker wants to be in that system with us. But for us, it works. It keeps it always lively, never dull. And the fact that every day is completely different here for everyone who works here is just kind of a good fit for us. Not to say that it's easy, not to say it's always smooth, not to say that it always works, but for our particular personalities on this piece of land, I think it's the best thing that we can do together here.
So far.
And what would you say have been like either the most satisfying or the most successful parts of what you've created? I
mean, someone asked me, we did for the first 16 years, we did most of the work we did. And there were some people we would hire to do some tractor work was with draft horses. And I remember a couple of, it was actually the Historical Society in the town nearby that said, it's sort of to answer what's sort of satisfying. They asked us, why are you making it so much harder? You can just go to the supermarket for all this stuff, and you're doing it with draft horses. And it's not exactly the right answer, and you'll probably figure out a way to say it better, but it's the challenge and the difficulty is the biggest reward, right? So the reason that having a cow and a field of lettuce and a hay crop works, I think, really well for us is that you never quite get it right, but you know you're giving it your best because you're failing on so many different levels simultaneously that it becomes like, oh, we're actually working beyond our abilities, which allows us to level up and try harder and do better and get stronger. And I feel like that's a weird answer, but it also still resonates, which is having extreme challenge, I think, opens you up to not just be worried about the arugula flea beetles in the springtime. It's like you toggle between that and the cow with the mild mastitis and the orchard that didn't get pruned quite in time. And then you have to sort of say, oh, what can I do the best today? And you look at your family and your team and your community, and you're like, oh, I'm not going to get any of this right. And then you're sort of, the only result is go for it. And that feels, I think, really good to us.
I think my answer would be the best thing to come out of this 20-year experiment for me has been the privilege of eating a whole food seasonal diet almost all the time, which is just becoming so increasingly rare in our food culture around the world. And I know how much it adds to my health and happiness. And I also know that it's just not available or it's not a part of the way most people are thinking about food these days, in part because of the way that food is marketed toward people. And I'm just really grateful that I get to spend my life eating like this.
Yeah. And one of the things I've sort of seen is, you've created this community of belonging. And that's pretty rare too. The memberships have the sense of belonging in something bigger. And that fuels them. I'm sure it fuels you. And it also gives you somewhat of a safety net to be able to fail a little bit. You're not as afraid to fail. And that is what drives innovation, right? So it's really cool to see like the bigger picture of what you've created and how it's worked, even though it's incredibly difficult and challenging looking at it from the outside.
And from the inside.
So I'd love to hear if you could just step back a little bit, describe a little bit more like the layout of the farm, what the week looks like, kind of some of those details of how you manage this chaos.
You're the chaos expert.
Okay. So we have a sort of central farmyard where our house, the greenhouses, our two main barns and our distribution area are. A little bit further out, we have a really big compost barn and some outlying barns with space for hay storage and livestock shelter. And all of that is surrounded by really, really, really nice soil. And most of what we grow our crops on now is drained, which was a huge investment and also just a really lucky hedge against all the changes that the climate is bringing to us. So we're getting far more rain than usual or no rain at all in kind of unpredictable patterns now. And drainage helps us manage the risk of both of those things. Infrastructure-wise, we rely really heavily on refrigeration and freezer space because we are feeding people year round. So we need to store things like our big harvests of root vegetables. We freeze a lot of our meat because it works to, butcher larger loads of animals all at once. And our water system is a well. We have a 25 kilowatt solar array that provides a percentage of our electrical needs. We've got 10 electric vehicle chargers at the front of the farm that anybody is welcome to come and use. And what else am I forgetting that we got going on here? We have grain storage here. We have a very, very bare bones milking parlor where we milk anywhere between 15 and 30 cows, depending on the season. And all of our grazing is rotational. So we have a perimeter fence line plus a heck of a lot of mobile fence that we move anywhere from 12 hours to a week to fresh pasture for all of our animal groups during the grazing season. And a typical day begins at 7 when we have our morning meeting with our farmers who right now we have 6 full-timers. In the summer, we'll bring on some summer help to work in the vegetable field and help with our rotational grazing. And we plan our day from there. We have lead farmers who direct the day-to-day activities of their areas of expertise. So we have Beth, who manages all of the things that fall under plants. We have Anne, who's been with us for almost 9 years now, who manages the things that fall under animals. We have Jackie, who takes the lead in the dairy, and we have Catherine who takes the lead on the milk after it's out of the cow. So that's our team that gets the day organized and brings the good energy every day to get it done. I am unfortunately mostly in the office these days, handling administration, the business side, communications, all that glorious stuff. And Mark is most of the time in the field doing the high skill jobs that he knows how to do after 30 years of farm experience now.
So and then with the CSA setup, when do you have weekly pickups? How does that look? How does that fit into the whole week?
Today, we're talking to you on a Friday, which is what we call game day. And that's when our members come to pick up their food. So the work today will be getting everything looking beautiful and as ready as it can be for our members who start arriving at 3. They come between 3 and 7 p.m. on Fridays, and they take hopefully everything that they need to make 21 meals this week. And some of our members also pick up on the weekends, but Friday is the day that we staff our distribution and really put forward an effort to connect with our members and help them connect with each other.
Hey, podcast listeners, we're going to pause for a moment to hear from one of our show sponsors. This episode of the Winter Growers Podcast is brought to you by BCS America. BCS two-wheel tractors are designed and built in Italy, where small-scale farming has been a way of life for generations. Discover the beauty of BCS on your farm with PTO-driven implements for soil working, shredding cover crops, spreading compost, mowing under fences, clearing snow, and more. All powered by a single gear-driven machine that's tailored to the size and scale of your operation. Tractors and attachments are on sale now. Find sale pricing and your nearest dealer at bcsamerica.com. That's bcsamerica.com.
Hey, you all, Farmer Jesse here. So our work has always been about keeping farming information as free and open to the public as we possibly can, and that won't change. One way in which we make that possible, though, is through advertising on podcasts like this, on our YouTube channel, on our forum, and so on. So if you are a small farm-related company selling seeds or tools or something growers could use, or if you're an organization putting on some conference or offering a grant or looking for farmer contributors or something else farm-related that I'm not thinking of, get in touch with us at farmermichelle@notillgrowers.com. That's farmermichelle@notillgrowers.com. Supporting us helps to grow this work and grow farmers. So we all thank you. Again, that email is farmermichelle@notillgrowers.com, or you can find our contact information at notillgrowers.com. All right. Thanks, you all. Enjoy the show.
And what does your winter production look like? I mean, obviously with a year-round CSA, it isn't maybe as focused as much on fresh products, which is kind of common in the, winter growing vegetable model. Do you have fresh products? Do you combine those with, it sounded like you did some fermented or, mostly storage crops. What does that look like?
So it's, each component of the farm has a slightly different strategy, and we're always making bigger changes than we're quite prepared to deal with. So right now we're looking at a more seasonal dairy as we have a more experienced dairy team, and maybe considering a more of a dry herd during the winter when food quality isn't the same. And focusing on the vegetable side of things and fruits, as Kristen said earlier, most of the fruits, we don't have an abundance enough beyond the season they come in. So we have apples usually for a month or two. We don't have a big enough orchard to do all winter storage. We do about 20 to 25 acres of veg during the growing season. We only have, 400 by 30, 200 by 30 hoop houses and 250 by 20s. So very limited indoor production or under glass production, enough to have greens. And then the rest of it is in the trailers that we buy off the road, refrigerated trailers, and put high tech coolers and freezers in them. And so everything from celery root and leeks, all the sort of regular veg are all stored September, October, November in coolers, either in bulk bins or root bags. But members this year, we've had a very mild season, but we do continuously harvest like kale until it's finally no good. The kale still looks gorgeous. It looks like we might go through the whole winter this year with uncovered field kale. Lacinato is still there. I think we're actually out of lacinato this week. Collards this winter are holding until now, and kale. And then, a dozen or 2 dozen different root crops that are keeping well. Occasionally we'll do something fancy like Belgian endive. That'll be like one every 3 or 4 years. We'll decide to put some extra effort in. And I guess one of the things we do is also we sort of optimize the team of farmers, our energy and our focus. So like right now we've got a pizza oven. We're playing around with what to do with some value added grain products. Our decision this year for veg was let's not add new weird crops because people are less excited about weird crops after a while. We're not doing purple carrots, but we are going to try to expand the rain. The number of months that a given crop is there will be expanded this year, hopefully by a month or two. One because it's gotten markedly warmer. Burlington has 30 more frost-free days on average than it did 25 years ago, so almost a day per year. So we're actually in zone 5 comfortably instead of 4 now. And so we're planting our head lettuce in the germination chamber probably next week, which is probably 3 weeks before when we would normally plant it. And then we'll transplant that into the houses. In addition, you mentioned the sort of fermented foods. We make a couple tons of sauerkraut and kimchi, fermented hot sauce. Kristen's been taking shots of kimchi brine lately in the morning.
Keeps you young.
And so hair in your chest, I'm sure.
Right. And we started syruping a lot earlier this season too. We started a week and a half ago and had some incredible runs already. So a lot of it's just kind of like, we're not going to do this year. Let's do this instead. Again, I think change is something that we do really well. What are you saying?
Can I add one thing that I file under winter production and season extension, even though most people probably don't think of it this way, which is that we really encourage our members to put up their own vegetables, preserve their own vegetables when we have the bounty of the season really rolling in. Tomatoes, for example, we love when people put up their own tomatoes, whether it's just chucking bags of them into a chest freezer to be processed later, or making and canning their own sauce, or freezing it. Our greens, we encourage people to blanch and freeze a lot of greens so that they're already prepped for the winter and their winter meals are, halfway there already. And herbs, all of our fresh green herbs that we have in abundance during the year, we teach people how to put those into the freezer and use them to be better cooks all winter long.
And we're also playing with basically low labor options to get earlier spinach without a hoop house. So we're doing more raised bed culture, even though we get laughed at by larger producers. The raised bed obviously has twice as much topsoil and tends to melt the snow a little bit better. And this fall, we only did maybe a 1/4 acre of lettuce, scallions, spinach, mosh, with one layer of Ag 19 on it, not the heavy duty row cover that is probably smarter. We just didn't have any. But on milder winters, those crops are making it through. So we're probably harvesting those in the next 8 weeks, 6 weeks. And so that kind of organic flow into, oh, wow, we're switching fields. Hey, this soil's a little better drained. Oh, it's south facing. Let's put spinach in. Overwintering onions, some sweet onions, things like that, are also, I think, giving members a little taste of spring. Even if it's a small amount, what we're finding is it doesn't take a salad every day to make people feel like spring is coming. So in terms of quantities, just the thought that, we are trying to increase the diversity in seasons that you get a little tired of shredded celery root salad sometimes, even though that might be my favorite vegetable in the winter. And members really appreciate the small amounts. Like one year we put parsley in little 4-inch pots and gave everyone a little parsley plant. People were like, oh, that was so nice. So it's really trying to create an agricultural family of non-farmers, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was curious about is, do you feel, since obviously you're consuming this food year round, do you feel like in the winter, is the fresh stuff you're able to produce satisfying those cravings?
I have to say, and I don't mean this in sort of a self-serving marketing way, but yeah, once your body and your palate are adjusted to what seasonality tastes like, it doesn't taste good or feel good to reach outside of the season that you're in. To me, anyway. And I think a lot of our members feel the same way.
It's like a 2-year transition.
Yes, it absolutely is a very abrupt transition for people who are used to the ubiquity of the grocery store. But to me, having a spring salad this time of year here in February just tastes wrong and weird. And you do taste the fact that lettuce has traveled a long way out of your own ecosystem and your own climate. And normal winter salad for us is a shredded carrot salad or a shredded carrot and cabbage salad. And that just tastes right and feels right to my body, at least. Do you agree? I'm also, not to say I'm not eager for the fresh greens when they do come, but then we're ready for them. But winter would just taste bizarre to me right now to have fresh spring greens.
I think for me, one of the biggest changes was raising meat. I don't think as a Northeastern vegetable grower in my first couple of years of training, it was sort of like, oh, meat, is that even a farm product? I think I was that sort of focused on how to create a rotationally diversified membership for veg. But I feel like when I'm eating, I tell Kristen, and she rolls her eyes, but she's rolled her eyes about a lot of things she's now doing, crowd shots, which is that I feel like the animals do a really good job of harvesting, as Joel Salatin puts it, the salad bar. And so if I'm just eating rare or raw burger and good water and good milk and a little kimchi, I feel like that's the perfect diet for me for most of the winter. I do have other stuff. We cook somewhat normal meals sometimes, but I feel like having chickens eat the frozen remains of the kale and then eating those eggs, whatever it is, I feel like the animals do a much nicer job of kind of taking generally lower quality greens, their hay, whatever it is in the wintertime, and making them into really high quality food. So I'm the guy that would make the world eat meat instead of tofu.
No, good point. I love all the conjugated linoleic acid that you're getting through the meat, right? Yeah. And that's often something no one really thinks of, but it's also rare to get that quality of meat too. So it's a good point. How many members do you have now? And what's sort of the retention rate? What's also the average cost too?
Yeah. Well, we shifted our business model a lot last year. Half of our revenue used to come from delivering memberships to New York City, and the other half was local membership. We sadly had to drop our New York City members last year when the cost of transportation, labor, and the logistics that were involved just went out of reach for us.
All at once.
So we're fully focused on our local membership now. Our membership is priced at $115 per adult per week. Our members are asked to sign on for the full year to commit to that for us so that we can plan to grow for them. We are right now we're feeding 120 people. Mm-hmm. Some of those are our staff who get a free full diet share once they've been with us for 6 months. We aim to add another 40 members before we hit the mid part of the season this year in order to make the numbers work okay. And we also hope to do a good portion of wholesale for lamb, which we have more of right now than we can put through our membership. So we're adding some lamb sales and hopefully some restaurant and retail sales on that side of things.
And I imagine that there must be a pretty large demand for that too, correct?
It's tricky to figure out a new market, and I just started doing it last year, and I'm learning and very eager if anybody has wisdom out there on how to market lamb. I am all ears because I have a beautiful flock of 250 ewes right now, and they're all pregnant and due to lamb in April. So we're going to have probably 500 little ones running around by the time the grass hits in May.
And you said you have 6 employees year round typically, and then increase a little bit in the summer. I know you've gone on to educate and produce a number of farmers who've started their own farms. Is that sort of the goal with a lot of the employees to, expand this out into the world? Or is it more about just getting the job done?
You want to take this one?
For a change?
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
It's a good question. I think change is the dynamic certainty for us. In the first dozen years, most of the farmers who came were very much like us. closer in age because we were a lot younger, and everyone was like, we're going to farm. And we were sort of shocked because we're like, wait, there's infinite work here. Why would you ever go do your own? And so farmers come for 1 to 3 or 4 years at a stipend level, room and board, and a little whatever we had, we shared. And now we're paying New York minimum wage is $15 an hour plus food. We're closing in on 20 if you take the full compensation package, which is a ton of money compared to 20 years ago. And I think more than that, the farmers that come here now look at what we're doing and they're like, hell no, I don't want to run like that. And there's more of we want a wage that we can live on, raise a family on, and maybe we're not going to go find the land that the Amish are buying next door and create our own farm. So I think there's a combination of things, of shifts happening. A more thoughtful group of younger and older farmers seems to be coming with us, sometimes with more training, sometimes with no prior farming. But I would say a more mature, less idealistic cohort seems to be the norm of what we're hearing from other farmers as well, that if it's not a migrant team, which we are not, then it's a group of people that might do this for 10 or 12 years, work hard on a farm, maybe longer. And I think the exciting part for me and Kristen now, we've gone through a lot of sort of tectonic and also cataclysmic changes here, is what need do we want to answer as employers? How much education can we foster that sense that we all grew up with, which is the world is our organic oyster, let's have it. And now it's like, who would do that? The income's low, the stress is high, agriculture is hard. And I think both Kristen and I now in our early 50s are like, okay, we need to make it easier for other young farmers to not just work here, which we're trying to do every day, but also what are the skills they need and the energy they need to start again with that kind of, hey, now it's not a groundswell of exciting organic energy, which it was in the 80s and 90s. Now it's like a revolutionary last stand to be doing anything that's not giant agribusiness, right? The consolidation is seemingly everywhere globally. It's happening so much faster than we expected. And so Kristen has said, and maybe you can say it now, sort of like providing hope and reality and realism to our group of our team here and others. And we're kind of figuring out how do you do that? We already have land. We went through that exciting era of everyone's going to have their own farm. And now we're like, oh, it didn't work that way. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I echo that completely. And I think the landscape of relations between people who own farms and people who work on farms is shifting really, really fast. And we're, as early 50s folk who've been doing this for a while, trying to keep tabs on how that culture is shifting and respond to it. And it's a challenge. It's tricky. We can't, with a straight face, really say to people who come and work here anymore, yes, we will show you the path to owning your own farm business in 5 years or 10 years, because so many things have changed. The access to land is a lot harder. I think the market for direct marketing food has become more complicated and softer than it was when we started. And then the things that we face as challenge, like the increased cost of labor, the scarcity of labor, the shift, even I would add, in interest among the cohort of young people who tend to come to work on a farm has gone from environmental to social. So people used to come here because they wanted to solve climate change. People now are really interested in food justice and social justice, and that is a different problem set. So yeah, it's one of the things that I think is going to keep farming lively and interesting and fresh and challenging in the next few years, and we're looking forward to working on that aspect of it as well.
Do you have any ideas and solutions for that from your experience?
I think it's been a very painful process, really. I think my first advice would be to farm owners to listen. It's hard sometimes to spend the time and the cost of that time to have deep, difficult talks with the people who make up your team, but it's essential. And then to also try to share from an owner's perspective the challenge of getting the numbers to work out on the right side of zero with your team, and to encourage some participation and buy-in on that side of farming. Most people don't land on farms because they're interested in the books. They want to be in the greenhouse. They don't necessarily come here because they want to learn how to run a very difficult small business. So trying to get buy-in on that front and share perspective with each other is probably where I am right now.
And as Kristen is saying that, I 100% agree. I think the other thing is, we're still using the drug dealer model here, which is give them a little and they'll come back for more. I think they see that we're still in it, right? So they're like, okay, these are people that on a good day we respect. Why are they still doing it? And then Kristen and I have kind of laughed about the idea of atomic loyalty. I think everyone who farms here, including us on bad days, rolls our eyes and like, why would we do this? But then we leave, people go on vacation and they come back and they're like, I hate it here, but I hate it so much less than eating supermarket food in Oaxaca, right? It's like you go to anywhere in the world and then they come back. We have incredible soil. We do extensive farming instead of intensive. So there's arguably some nutrient density that I think is here. We've been spreading our own compost for 20 years. I think there are some metrics that are better, but I think the combination of that, asking humans to do what they can't do, basically an impossible checklist, and then getting up each day and smiling like, hey, here we go. Let's go farm again. Wow, it was hard yesterday. It's hard today. And then eating good food with people that have a similar vision. Over and over, we have people sort of, God, I hate Essex Farm, but I hate it less than everything else. And then we sort of celebrate that. We try to have team meals a couple times a month, if not a week. We're now back to twice a week. We do Tuesday and Thursday, just quick meals together for lunch, and then a team meal at least once or twice a month. But that remembrance of being now an outpost and a revolutionary, I think does attract people of like, oh, right, there are bigger tectonic problems, to use that word again, that we're not solving as a society. Let's keep the hope alive, and gosh, it tastes good. I don't know if that doesn't really fully sum it up, but it's surprising how hard it can be here, and people come back so happy or leave here. And then we get the love letter 2 years later, right? You lose a good farmer who finds greener pastures and they're like, now I'm managing people. You and Kristen did a great job. And they left in tears and upset, right?
So what is next? I mean, are you at a place where you can kind of settle into what you've created now and ride that a little bit? Or do you have big visions and dreams for the next 10 years? How do you roll with that?
I will give Kristen this one, but I want to start with one of the big changes that's happened in the last 2 years is Kristen runs the leads meeting without me, which I think is a good thing. And it's a group of all women who are running the farm. And that, I think, among a bunch of other big changes coming up, are showing painfully sometimes, but in a good way, some of the changes that are coming up. Maybe you want to talk to that a little bit. I
love my team so much. And I love working with a group of smart, strong women. They happen to be women. It's not something that we. But the men are uninvited. Our team is majority women here. We also have great guys, but majority women, and I think that's probably a trend that we'll see on farms everywhere in the coming years, and hopefully. Farm ownership will reflect that, and it won't just be farm workers, but farm owners will be majority women. I hope so. My second book about the farm came out right before the pandemic, and that one's called Good Husbandry. I'd like to write a third book in the next few years to make it a neat little trilogy that sort of traces the life of this farm. We're in our early 50s, so we know we can't do this forever and ever. But I think the next decade, we're dedicated to refining our model, seeing how far we can take it, and hopefully remaining a beacon of possibility for people who are interested in diversified, sustainable farming. We can hold a place here for the independent farm in a time when consolidation is just making it super tricky. So that's my goal for the next 10 years. Who can ever predict what happens after that? But what about you, Mark?
I mean, I think with the downsizing and losing New York City, there were a number of shocks there. One was that if we were at 1.3 million gross sales a few years ago as our max, with some grant money included in that as well. And last year with Just Local, our first year of Just Local in in 10 years, it was 775, so pushing 800,000. And that was just a nice reminder that circling the wagons when you're under attack, and I say that loosely, but I do think that the American food system is intentionally wiping out small entrepreneurial farms, right? Every dollar you can make in agribusiness involves pushing somebody else out, right? There's a limited amount of food we eat. Let's see if we can push out the smaller producers to get that last gallon of milk sold. So holding on tight feels valuable in and of itself. I think that's worthy, and just to say, hey, we're here for another season against all odds. And then I think both Kristen and I are also looking. I think we're starting the quest of which intersections are most fruitful for us going forward. So having a women's team of leads, Kristen is actually speaking at a local food justice summit to sort of listen and speak at the same time of what is it to create more equity and diversity widely in this weird sector, this tiny little sector of alternative organic ag. And then which technology, maybe the next part is not so much the technology, but can carbon become something that becomes a win for the smaller producer, not just the mega farms, right? The mega farms are already co-opting regenerative faster than we could say those syllables. And they don't even know what it means. They've never double dug a bed or even drink. Most of them have never been on a farm. They're just creating money through this bubble of carbon credits that don't actually exist in many cases. So can we bring authenticity to a planet-based approach as opposed to a money-based approach, right? And those questions and that quest will never be answered. I think these are impossible questions, but that feels still really hopeful to say, oh, what would it look like to have a regional carbon economy? Pros and cons, right? A lot of fun stuff there. And I think reminding ourselves that in the face of this sort of, I don't know how to say it, what we're talking about, right? There's big farms and there's little farms, and we're all trying to do this. To remember, I think, for the two of us and for our team and our community, that farming is one of the nicest touchstones to remember how great it is to be alive I've ever come across, right? And that one of the reasons that diversified farming and year-round farming and winter farming is so beautiful is that every day you walk outside and 20 below gets in your nostrils, you remember that you're alive in the universe. And a screen-based life where you're inside moving tons of grain around the world on a computer isn't a life that I want. There are jobs that do that really well. But the idea that we get to be outside on the planet, in the universe, is one of the best reasons to farm, right? Is that every day you're uncomfortable and comfortable at some point, hopefully. You're in pain and then you're getting stronger. All those things, I think, are the reasons to farm. And I'm hoping that farming can go from the Northeastern conceit of, oh, all we eat is lettuce, to, oh, farming is really, how do we deal with lumber and energy and not just what's in my salad? And I think this farm is the very beginning of a question like that, of like, what did it look like prior to colonization to live on this planet as an agriculturalist, which most of the cultures here were. They did some or a lot of agriculture as well as hunting and gathering. And I think that's really exciting to think about. And I feel like as I get older, I get much more excited to just see a snowflake, see a chicken, see an ash tree, even though it may have ash wasting disease. There's something really beautiful still about being on the land. And I think that's what we offer to our community, which is you don't just have to come to distribution and get your food. You can walk this agricultural mess and have a good day. And that's really exciting.
Well, on that note, thank you, Mark. Thank you, Kristen. Let's shift into our lightning round questions. I know your time is short here, so are you ready to jump in?
Absolutely.
Okay. You can go back and forth. You can pass, whatever you want to do on these questions. So your choice.
And we just had a neighbor drive in, then Kristen's going to greet her. So she'll join me in just a second.
Okay. Well, then we'll start with you. What is your favorite crop to grow, cook, or eat?
Because I started out in vegetables, I think my absolute favorite crop is milk and milking cows. But second to that, I'm all about broccoli rabe. I still find that broccoli rabe and garlic and lard is delicious.
Oh gosh, it's got to be the lamb. I love sheep. I love everything about them. I love lambing season. I love shearing. I love watching them graze. I love what they do to the ground. And then I really love eating them. I just think it's the best meat in the world. So yeah, I'm going to claim lamb is my favorite.
Number 2, what gets you up in the morning?
My team. I love working with the people who love to do this work, and the people who are, moving toward a better farm, a better planet, a better diet every day. So those are the folks that I think of when I open my eyes in the morning.
What's the hardest part of farming?
Making the numbers work out right when you're also trying to do the right thing by the planet, and for the people in your close circle and in your larger community, trying to balance the economic, environmental, and social factors that go into agricultural production every single day.
What's your favorite tool?
A bridle. I love horses. And I really miss working them on the farm, but I kept a riding horse. My daughter has a riding horse, and I think of the horses as a tool because they're what gets me out on the land with joy. It's the best combination of observational work of farming plus just pure physical, emotional joy.
What's the favorite music you listen to while farming?
I actually feel pretty strongly about not listening to music while farming. Still, after 20 years, the work is complicated enough that it requires my full attention when I'm deep in it. If I'm doing something truly routine, like washing eggs or watching glass, then I listen to podcasts, actually.
Do you have a favorite?
Yes, I do. Rumble Strip. Jessica Heilman, big shout out to her. She is based in Vermont, and she puts out some of the very best stories that are being made in the world right now. And they're very relatable to us because they're often about rural life just across the lake from us in Vermont.
Mark, we're going to go back. What's your favorite tool?
This is a terrible answer, and it probably negates everything we talked about today, but it's really great to be able to carry a computer in my phone around and not have to be inside. So I'm going to go with my iPhone has been freaking amazing. I don't want to spend any more time on it for the rest of my life, but at least I get to be outside for almost all of my emailing and other communications. That and a razor sharp Leatherman.
Favorite way to relax or self-care activity, or how do you take care of your body, heart, and mind as a farmer?
For me, it's exercise that has no other purpose but the exercise. So about 6 months ago, I started dedicating 45 minutes a day to just taking care of my physical body, which means yoga, it means some cardio, it means some strength. And I can get out of bed right now without those aches and pains that I was feeling when I was just dedicating my body to the exercise that comes from physical work.
And for me, I started rowing and running with my 2 kids. They both row and run. So I'm with Kristen on the exercise part, that farming is brutal and exercise can help you through it. And yeah, I have a list. I don't practice them, but I dream of speaking more Spanish, doing more pottery, more art. And farming is still fun enough that I'm not doing those things and still laughing, but they're on my list of let's make sure I make some time for them someday.
How do you turn off farming, or can you, do you?
Why wouldn't you?
I'm really trying hard this year to stop work at 3 p.m.
How's that going for you?
It's not, I haven't managed to achieve that. Yes. Not even one day, but it's a goal. You can't get there unless you have a goal. So that's my hope for this year. Oh, and I took 22 days of January off. I travel's my old love, and I traveled with a friend through Japan, most of the time in Bangladesh, onto Singapore, and then LA, and then home. And I came back really, really reset with a new perspective, especially after seeing the environmental degradation in Bangladesh and feeling re-energized to work in opposition to that. The people of Bangladesh are amazing, but you almost never see a blue sky because of the pollution there.
And Mark, are you going to hold to your answer that you don't?
Yeah, I basically have made the mistake from a very young age to think that farming is everything except for mining. And so why would you not farm or do mining? So maybe I should do some more mining because they are slightly different. But those 2 things, I think, are all of human existence has those 2 things as part of them. Let's just do this.
Well, what would you be doing if you weren't farming is the next question.
You first.
I'd be a full-time writer. I really love the balance of farming and writing. It's worked really well for me. But if I had to do just one thing, if I had to choose something other than farming, I really don't think that I'm at this point in my personal evolution suited for anything else. So I'd spend more time writing, and then I guess riding horses recreationally.
And Kristen asked me a couple of years, like, if you weren't farming, what would you do? And I was like, I would paint. And she's like, cool. Painters are now making $65 an hour around here. That's a pretty good wage. And I was like, no. I would start oil painting. And she looked at me like that.
What do you feel is your gift to give on behalf of people and the land?
I feel like I'm so lucky to be able to communicate what a farm life is with a wider audience, and to connect with folks on the level of narrative and story, and share the enthusiasm that I feel about nurturing living things.
And I think for me, being the sort of the born loser attitude of just like, I'm just going to do it no matter what. I will take on projects that I definitely can't achieve. I will fail at them, and then I will get up and do it again. It's nice to have that energy, and then to also listen to others and watch them do that. And I think there's a nice synergy here among our team and in our community of, hey, we're going to try this, even though it's not likely, and to not give up, right? That there have been so many times where this farm hasn't been worth it. And we've looked at each other and been like, why are we doing this? And then you give yourself a day or a year or a decade, and you look back and you're glad you're still married, and you're glad you're still farming, and you're glad you have the kids, all three of which almost drove you to drink.
And finally, how will you grow old? How are you growing old farming?
One day at a time. The longer range plans are still kind of elusive.
Oh no, you're clear. You're like, I want out someday before I die. And I'm like, I don't want to die. I just want to keep doing this.
It's a tricky question, right? I think figuring out how to retire as a farmer is one of the hardest lifelong career questions, and we haven't solved that one yet, but we do think about it.
And I think there's two parts to it. One is, what do our bodies that soon become sort of microbial soup do as they get less or more capable? Right now, we're both getting stronger, and it feels nice, but I'm sure that won't stay that way forever. And then the other question is the place, the land, the community, the idea of succession in a disappearing business, right? There aren't as many farmers every day. What do we do to create viability for you or whoever it is that ends up farming here after we're gone? And how do you do that and also have a chance to be less on point every day? Like, if we don't want to farm as hard as we are now in 30 years. And I think starting that conversation probably 10 years ago, which we did, but now actually putting it in, like, we still don't have our wills fully scoped out, really putting energy. This is your after 3 p.m. deadline, right? How do you also make a space to thoughtfully listen and communicate to the people in your stakeholders, basically your family, your friends, your community, and pass on something that's not an albatross? It's something we're actively working with other growers and the wider sort of regional farm community to say, what do we do? How do we do it? What makes sense? What do we need? Those are really exciting questions.
Well, thank you to both of you. I would love to keep going. I know your time is short, but this has been a delight, entertaining, intellectually stimulating. Thank you both for taking the time, making the time to be here.
Such a pleasure to talk with you, Clara, and thank you for helping communicate to the world what all of us are doing on our farms scattered around the country and around the globe.
And definitely a drag podcast reunion tour at our next conference.
Definitely. I'll be there. Okay.
Yes.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Today's show was produced by me, Clara Coleman, with support from No-Till Growers. Special thank you to Willie Breeding for the theme music. Thank you to the patrons at patreon.com/no-till growers for helping to make this show possible. Thank you all for listening.